Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by AgSouth Farm Credit. Now, first of all, I want to apologize. I meant to talk to you last night on Sunday night like I normally do and get the video out early for you all on Monday morning, but I got home from a trip down to Mississippi that was all part of work. Spoke to the Mississippi Farm Bureau state meeting down there. I didn't get into about 2 a.m. and I was exhausted. So I had to spend the morning working on some other things, and I finally got a chance this afternoon to really dig into this forecast. I'm going to tell you something. Had I had to give you this forecast last night, I think I would have missed one important thing that I see shifting. And it's going to be very important for the longer range forecast, which I'm going to give to you in just a couple of moments. It starts with the map you've been staring at. It's right here. What I've been paying close attention to is what's going on across parts of Europe. You're looking at the Alps, and they just recently added 3 to 5 feet of snow in this area. It snowed up in Germany. It snowed over into Poland, Belarus, coming out of Ukraine, across Russia. And this is what I'm really starting to wonder about. If you look over the next 10 days, we see substantially colder than average air here throughout much of Russia. It's still warm in the Arctic. That's the very top of this map. But it's cold in Greenland, and it's also cold in Alaska. Now, what's the point of me sharing all this with you? There's no doubt that over the next 15 days, the pattern, that way it's going to be evolving, is I feel pretty well set in stone. But it's the second half of December, it's the beginning of January, that I'm going to have to be watching to see if any of this begins to cause some pretty big disruptions in the distribution of heat across the Northern Hemisphere. And let me explain to you what I'm talking about. Overall, for much of the next 10 days, most of North America is mild. Maybe the only place that's closer to average is in AgSouth territory, down here in the south and southeast. But I'm worried about what this might be doing in the longer range. So let me tell you what I'm thinking about. This view here is top down on the Earth. We're looking at the North Pole, and we're not even in the troposphere. That's the layer of the atmosphere we live in. That's the one with all the weather in it. We're up here in the stratosphere, the layer above it. And what we watch for in the stratosphere is something called the polar vortex. There's actually two different polar vortexes. One is in the troposphere, and that's the one that delivers the really, really cold air. And there's one in the stratosphere, which when linked up with the tropospheric polar vortex is what delivers the really, really cold air. Now, what I notice right now is all that coldest air is over in Russia. It's been in Europe, and there's a big ridge of higher pressure in the stratosphere that's been pushing into Alaska. No matter how far out I play this, I keep seeing that same thing taking shape through the beginning of December. So what this is doing is that means we're redistributing where the coldest air is in North America. It's more here over Russia than it is over North America. So the distribution of temperatures here across not just North America but the Northern Hemisphere is that it's preferred on one side warmer and on the other side cooler. Now, why would I tell you about this? Because at some point, because of just normal chaos in the system and the way that fluids behave, this will have to readjust. And I want to look at when that might be happening as we stretch this out in the longer range in these tabs over here for our big forecast. Now, in the near term, we've got this. The last 7 days did deliver some pretty heavy rains into southern Georgia. It was much lighter across parts of the Carolinas than expected. And while overall I'm pretty happy about the drought relief that we are seeing across the Gulf Coast, we still have these drier conditions that have been in parts of the Mid-South and over here to the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic that still need undone. The problem is in the near term, this pattern isn't going to be overly corrective on that. But we saw these better signals going forward of more, possible drought relief as we go on. Now, November shaped up like this. This is precipitation ranks by climate district. And what we can see is that most of AgSouth territory was near average, primarily due to one big system that came in the month of November. But the farther you go toward the Appalachian Mountains and they get into the Tennessee Valley, the Mississippi Valley, things are much, much, much drier. And we have questions as to whether or not this El Niño, which is going to be a mainstay of our discussion at the end of this forecast video, if it has what it takes to deliver the subtropical jet stream flow to not only undo drought across the South, but throughout the Midwest, in fact, the whole of the eastern two-thirds of the United States. That's what I'm going to be watching. So one of the reasons, again, why last night I didn't get a chance to talk to you is because I was driving home from Jackson, Mississippi, and I brought my son with me on this trip. He wanted to know what his dad does, so I said, hey, let's go. I'm going to give a talk to Mississippi Farm Bureau, their state meeting, and come down with me. So he did. And on the way back, he said, can we stop in Memphis? I want to see Memphis. I said, sure. So we stopped in Memphis. Now, I had a kind of an ulterior motive to stopping there. I wanted to see the river, the Mississippi. But when I stopped here with him, we did some great things. I took him down Beale Street, went to the Peabody Hotel where they have the ducks. You know, if you ever seen them there in the fountain in the middle of the hotel. I convinced him that the hotel was haunted, which was a lot of fun. We had great food there. Then I took him to see where Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. It was a really quite amazing moment for him. He's 11 years old, so to finally see something he's learned about in school was pretty good. But then we went to the Bass Pro Shop, which is here, which it's a pyramid if you've never seen it before. You can go all the way to the top of the pyramid and have a look at things. Now, what I was concerned about seeing was, since October 1, so much of the area that drains into the Mississippi, so much of the Mid-South, so much of the Carolinas and northern Georgia have been dry. And I was curious to see if we could get the effect of this by looking at the river itself. And sure enough, this is what it looks like. So we're looking north from the top of the Bass Pro Shop, which is this huge pyramid. And I said, Graham, do you see all this right over here? He says, yeah. He goes, what is that? And I said, that's sand. Normally, there's an additional 20 feet of water sitting on top of that. I said, right now that river is 6 feet below its lowest stage, or its low stage, not its lowest, but 6 feet below low stage. And I said, and that's really limiting this, which is having a major impact on U.S. agriculture. He says, what does it normally look like? I said, normally there's a whole bunch of barges going up and down this, but they can't right now because of how low the river is. It's tightening things up a bit. And I said, we have the same problem, not just here, but to the south of us, to the southeast of us. I said, and tomorrow when I get a chance to talk to some folks in the southeast, I said, we got to talk about this because it's so important for U.S. agriculture. Now, he wants to know when it's going to snow next, and I do have some good news for parts of the Appalachian Mountains here. But this pattern that we're going into is one where there's going to be such strong subtropical flow that it's going to set things up to really not change this map too much for much of the United States, except for a few select places. But I thought you might want to see right now what our season-to-date snowfall is, because we do have enough cold air coming in, like I said, to be bringing in some snow into the Appalachian Mountains. But he was hoping to get a big snowstorm out of this next big system I was telling him about on the way home, way up here where we live in Illinois. I want to know if that same storm system is going to be bringing rain to the southeast. So what I want to do for you in this video is I want to talk about our water health issue, which we just kind of covered a little bit here, what the near-term and the long-term forecast hold, and where I'm deriving some of this analog support, and then why in the world did I begin with Russia in the forecast. That's what we need to get into. Here's where it all starts. This is a kind of a North American view of satellite. Now, we don't get a whole lot of data because the sun isn't up for very long here, but I'm curious as to the position of this feature. That is the subtropical jet stream, okay? Now, if you said, Eric, dial me up something perfect to eliminate drought, I want the orientation of those winds to come in like that. In fact, I'd love it if not only that, but they came in with a little bit of a turn to them like this. If we can get that kind of flow out of the atmosphere, we're going to start to see our drought be worked away very, very quickly. But as it stands, those jet stream level winds look something like this. Now, as that resets, the subtropical jet is here, and it's coming across this part of the south, and it's being met with a polar branch of the jet stream here. You notice how it's splitting across the west? That split's key, because what we need to see here in terms of the jet stream's strength and position is a bit of a reorientation to make this split, the one I just drew this line over, between Hawaii and the Aleutian Islands. If that split moves back west, the whole of the country is going to be in for a pretty wild ride. And I want to know if that split is going to happen being aided along by El Niño in the coming weeks and months. We're going to get to that answer. In the near term, this is what we've got, not a whole lot. The split's too close. So we look here in the afternoon on Monday. Only the Northwest has got some flood issues going on. I'll show you how much precip in a minute. Strong winds in the plains. But right now we don't have any weather advisories on Monday afternoon down here across AgSouth territory. If we just kind of take a look at the pieces that are moving, take a look here. As I play this forward, going into Monday night, getting out there into Tuesday morning early, there's a little system, little clipper moving through my home state of Illinois. And as it moves through, it's going to be the one that might bring some snow, as I mentioned a few moments ago, on Tuesday night into the Appalachian Mountains. We could get some scattered showers also in parts of North Carolina out of this. But overall, this system is relatively weak, so we're not seeing a whole lot of precipitation out of this through the front half of this week. But something starts to take over in the longer-term pattern. And the newest update from the WPC is beginning to show another system that has the potential for possibly drawing in some Gulf moisture and bringing some flow back over the southeast and maybe some precipitation. Now, until then, all the activity is going to be up here in the northwest. And we're going to talk about some other places in the country just to provide some perspective in a few moments. But let's go here. This is the high-res European model. It right now, in my opinion, is the best initiated model. And we've already watched through that. That's where a little bit of snow Tuesday night and Wednesday morning could hit parts of the Appalachian Mountains with some scattered showers, Virginia, North Carolina. Okay, after that, nothing. nothing through Thursday, nothing through Friday. We get in toward the weekend on Saturday, right here. Now, this is what I'm watching. There's a lot of high pressure building in with a low pressure cell that just is trying to emerge right in this area. And on Saturday, as that occurs, you see the low beginning to show up here in the midsection of the country. Now listen, will it be exactly here at exactly this time at midnight on Sunday? No, it won't. But the fact that the models have continued to produce this system that then rolls basically like this toward New England is one that we've got to watch out for the chances for some thunderstorm activity, some heavier rains in AgSouth territory. The severe weather starts here first and then moves over toward us once we get into the day on Sunday. At least that's the current timing I've got on this. That clears out and brings in some colder air behind it, but that's the next system that I'm going to be watching very carefully. So to show you when it gets here, watch this. This is starting off on Monday, going through Tuesday, so there's a little bit of that possibility of rainfall coming to North Carolina, maybe some snow in the Appalachian Mountains. I'll show you that in a second. But then we got to go through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and here we go. Let's pick this up on Saturday night, getting into Sunday and through Monday, which means in the next 7 days or so, our next best chance of rain is this upcoming weekend, other than the chance of some scattered precip, a little bit of which could be coming through on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning in parts of North Carolina. But when this system comes through, does it have the potential for putting down some decent rain? That's what we have to ask about out of the forecast. Because we do know that there could be a little bit of snow accumulating here in the Appalachian Mountains, right on the border between Tennessee and North Carolina. But other than that, that's about it. So to kind of preface this longer range forecast, I want to show you next some probability maps. You see over the next 10 days, who's staying drier? Well, from Florida along this part of the coast, that's our best chances at having less than a half inch. So we have a 50 to 60% chance of this being the driest corridor. We're wetter here in the interior. And the farther north you go, we get better chances. And the farther west you go, right into this part of Georgia and Alabama, you get wetter. But you can see how dry the southwest is, how dry the plains are. And the big reason for this is that the subtropical jet is way down here and the polar jet's coming over the top. What needs to change? Get the jet stream going like this across the United States. Or like I said, diving like this and ending up here. Then we're in business for more of these systems. So as it stands, a lot of the country is looking pretty dry as we go forward. Who's going to be on the wetter side of this? Well, here's the chance at getting an inch. So you start to look throughout AgSouth territory. Maybe North Carolina's got the best probability of 40 to 50% chance of grabbing an inch of rain. It's also high down here on the western side of Georgia, getting into Alabama. But overall, you look at this, and it's not an overly wet pattern in the near term. Where does it go? Well, it doesn't get much better because you get out there about December 14th, and I'm going to give you this Northern Hemisphere view, and I don't like the placement of this trough right here. You see, I drew the line resulting in the flow pattern, and it's coming out of the northwest into the southeast. And that's just not the place to go to get moisture. That's why we look out there into week 2, which gets us to December 18th, as being a drier pattern. Now let me stitch this together for you. After December the 18th, I would like to know if all of this cold air getting stored up here is going to be enough to disturb the pattern for the last week of December and what that might look like. And if that cold air gets here, what's it going to do to our frost outlook? Because over the next 7 days, we do have some more cold air coming all the way down into the northern tip of Florida. Just to show you when that gets here, this was Monday morning's lows. We've already experienced these. That's Tuesday. Wednesday, major heat wave in the midsection of the country. There's Thursday, getting into Friday. Now watch, when does the cold air get here? It's not Saturday. It's at the end of the week. We're going to be talking about when we get that colder air that's coming through. So that was what our high temperature pattern looks like. This is what our low temperatures look like. So there's Monday into Tuesday, Wednesday ready. Here comes the cooler air at the end of the week, Thursday, and getting into Friday morning. That's when we have this chance late in the week of getting the cold overnight lows while the Midwest really, really warms up. But to be honest with you, this isn't that cold. In fact, because of the things I started off telling you with all the cold air on the other side of the planet, you look down on the North Pole, look at the temperature distribution. Very cold here, mild here. That doesn't really change much all the way up to day 10. And then day 10 to 15. Now, you get a little bit of a cooler signal, but this cold air that's over you is not linked to Arctic air. So it's not like it's brutally cold. It's just cooler than average by a few degrees, while the rest of North America is honestly looking at warmer than average temperatures. So we think about all of that. We think about what I started this video with, and what I really wanted to do in this video was just tell you got the chance of rain coming later this weekend, and then get right to this. You see, this is the new long-range update that was just released from NOAA on the 30th of November. And what are they calling for? They're calling for more mild days across most of the United States than cooler days. I look at this and go, all right, we may start November this way, or December this way, but I don't know if we finish December this way. Can we buy into the wetter signals that are still showing up here for parts of the South and Southeast? Sure, as long as the subtropical jet stops coming like this and starts coming in like that. Now, what could make it do that? What could make it do that is hopefully going to be El Niño influencing the global temperature pattern. You see, if you look right now at the forecast from the 15th of December to the 15th of January, we continue to see this area showing up wetter. We're continuing to see better contrast in the temperatures driving the subtropical jet. And this El Niño, which right now is trying to get to its peak here over the next probably 30 to 40 days, is likely going to help drive that. And I'm going to explain to you why I think that. I'll give you an international update and we'll be done, okay? What I think is going on is this. You see, when I look back at all of the Decembers that had an El Niño that was reaching a peak, temperature-wise, we tended to at times be a little cooler at the beginning of the month and then warmed up toward the end. So that's why you start to see the warmer conditions here. The coolest conditions tended to stay over in the southwest. But one thing was clear. Decembers with El Niños are wetter. Now, can we get better moisture getting back into our area? Because in the next 10 plus days, you've got one system coming through. It's the one that's going to happen late this weekend, right? We talked about that. Well, what about as we work our way toward the middle and end of this month? Are we going to start to see the reinvigoration of that subtropical jet to deliver? And what happens after this? Because right now, all of the models say, sure, bring it back. The CPC says, sure. Oops, sorry about that. Let's go back up here. Sure, bring it back. But is it really going to deliver? And what about beyond that? Once we get past the peak of this El Niño and get into January, February, March, we'll take a look. When I look at every single time we had a peaking El Niño in late December or early January, what happened January to March was we were wetter than average for AgSouth territory and we were cold. So what I'm trying to get to here and where we started this was that yes, right now the coldest air is in Russia. But there's good reason to believe that it's going to be the front half of winter that's the least active and the back half of winter that is the most active. And there's evidence here in the analogs, there's evidence in the models. I think this is going to be a back half weighted winter. And we could get pretty cold at times and also have quite a bit of wet weather going forward. Now we bring all of that up because last week, let me just bring this up for you here. Here's the newest drought monitor. And even though some of this has started to erode away, we still have this long-standing drought issue, not only in parts of AgSouth territory, but really in the southern U.S. I mean, down here in Mississippi and Alabama, these two states combined Mississippi and Louisiana have 90% of their land area covered in severe to exceptional drought. But if that jet stream reorients and comes into this area, we are in business for moisture. So there's still good long-term evidence of the pattern working against the drought issues. That's what I wanted to get to you. The last thing I want to talk about some global weather issues. So we talked about the cold air right now across much of Europe. Well, it's going to be becoming more mild in Spain and France, but still wet. We then look at the drought issues that have been going on in the southern tip of Africa, and we see some better precip trying to come in through here. Indonesia has been wet. We've been very wet in eastern Australia, although the forecast of the next 10 days is drier. We're getting wetter down here where we don't really grow a whole lot inside of that triangle. There's some agriculture in there, but it's not like it is on the eastern and western side of Australia. And then the last big thing to discuss is Brazil. Now, the models have been attempting to bring better rains farther to the north in Brazil. In fact, can I show you this a little bit differently? Let's go to one of my favorite. I'll just take you to my website, agweather.com. We're going to slide down here to the bottom, click on South American maps, and let's bring up the Brazil map. There it is. Now, right now, the drier conditions that you see here have been well forecast, but we've started to see better chances of rain moving farther and farther toward the north. And the better chances of rain are coming out of the flood-ridden areas down here in the south. So we need to see this changing. The GFS model is super dry in this area, whereas the Europeans trying to bring better moisture back in. But nearly every model, because of this, watch this, MJO, every model, because the MJO is sweeping back over here into what we call phase 8 and 1, which is out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, is trying to revive this area for moisture. I'm going to show it to you real quick. Ready? So we go back to one of my favorite websites, weatherbell.com. Once this pulls up, we're going to click on maps. We're going to have a look here at the European weeklies. These are the longer range. And I want to show you a 7-day sliding window of precipitation anomalies, not for North America, but for South America. We already looked at North America. There, at a 7-day anomaly. Now look at this. There's the drier conditions now through the next 10 days, but watch what the models do in the second half of December. Look at all that. If that verifies, all of this conversation about all of the damage done to the Brazilian crop will start to fade pretty quickly. So let's watch it together. I'll keep you up to date next week in our new forecast video. Until then, have a good one. Thanks.